Greetings, my friends. Today we delve into a subject shrouded in mystery, the covenant between God and Abraham, a pact forged in blood, a ritual both ancient and unsettling, exploring its deeper meaning, venturing beyond the surface. This story takes us back thousands of years. Gods and goddesses walk the earth. Sacrifice was commonplace, a way to appease the divine. It's against this backdrop that we find Abraham, a man chosen by God for a special purpose, a promise that would shape nations, a promise of land, of descendants as numerous as the stars, a relationship with the divine. But this promise came at a price, sealed with a ritual both fascinating and disturbing. Imagine, if you will, Abraham standing before the Lord, the weight of this divine encounter heavy upon him. God, the all-powerful, the creator of heaven and earth, chooses to engage with this man, this mortal. Why? What was it about Abraham that set him apart? The very act of making a covenant implies a kind of equality, a balance of power. Yet how can a man truly stand as an equal to God? This inherent imbalance is what makes the covenant, and the ritual used to seal it, so compelling, so ripe with symbolic significance. God lays out his part of the bargain, unimaginable blessings, a legacy that will span generations. But what does he require in return? This is where the ritual comes in. A tangible, visceral expression of Abraham's commitment, his unwavering faith in the face of the unknown. The ritual itself is described in chilling detail in the book of Genesis. Animals are sacrificed, cut in two, their blood forming a gruesome pathway. It's a scene straight out of a horror film, enough to make even the strongest stomach churn. Abraham, in a trance-like state, walks between the pieces of the slain animals, a symbolic gesture of his acceptance of the covenant's terms. He is essentially saying, if I fail to uphold my end of the bargain, may what befell these animals before me. This act, this blood sacrifice, is more than just a formality. It's a visceral representation of the gravity of the situation. It's a promise made not with ink on paper, but with lifeblood itself. It's a powerful image, one that has captivated and disturbed theologians and scholars for centuries. The book of Genesis doesn't shy away from the gory details, you see. It paints a vivid picture of the ritual, sparing us none of the unsettling imagery. Imagine, if you will, the scene, a desolate landscape, the sun beating down on the parched earth. Abraham, guided by divine instruction, gathers his materials: a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, a ram of the same age, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. These were not mere possessions. They were valuable livestock, representing a significant sacrifice for Abraham. He meticulously prepares the animals, dividing them down the middle and placing the halves opposite each other. The air would have been thick with the metallic scent of blood, a stark contrast to the serenity of the surrounding wilderness. It's a scene that would make even the most hardened butcher wince. The beasts of burden, sacrifices for a promise. Now, animal sacrifice was a common practice in ancient times, a way to appease the gods, to atone for sins, to ensure good fortune. But the sheer scale of this particular sacrifice, the specific animals chosen, and the precise manner in which they are arranged suggests something more, something deeply symbolic. Each animal likely held a specific meaning in the context of this ritual. The heifer, representing fertility and abundance, perhaps symbolized the promised land overflowing with milk and honey. The goat, often associated with sacrifice and atonement, could have represented the forgiveness of sins. The ram, a symbol of strength and leadership, might have signified Abraham's descendants, destined to become a great nation. And the birds, creatures of the air, could represent the spiritual aspect of the covenant, the connection between the earthly and the divine. Between the halves, Abraham's bloody walk. But the truly unsettling part, the bit that really sends shivers down your spine, is yet to come. Abraham, in a trance-like state, walks between the rows of dismembered animals, his sandals no doubt becoming slick with blood. This act, far from being a mere formality, was a physical manifestation of the covenant's terms. It was as if Abraham was saying, I walk this path, fully aware of the consequences should I stray from my commitment. Imagine the weight of that moment, the gravity of the situation pressing down on him, the stench of blood, the silence of the wilderness, the sheer otherworldliness of it all. It's enough to make your hair stand on end, isn't it? The smoking firepot, a divine presence. As dusk descends, casting long shadows across the gruesome tableau, a smoking firepot and a burning torch appear, passing between the pieces of the animals. This, my friends, is the manifestation of God himself, a physical representation of his presence in this covenant. Smoke and fire, symbols of the divine in many cultures, served as tangible proof of God's acceptance of the sacrifice, his acknowledgement of the pact being made. It was a visual spectacle designed to leave no doubt in Abraham's mind that this was a deal sealed in heaven. This, my friends, is the setting, the stage for this extraordinary covenant, a covenant sealed not with a handshake, not with a signature on a piece of parchment, but with the lifeblood of sacrificed animals and the terrifying, awe-inspiring presence of the divine. An age of blood and bronze understanding ancient rituals. Now, to truly grasp the significance of this covenant, we must journey back to a time far removed from our own. We are talking about the Bronze Age, roughly 3,000 years ago, a world where life was often harsh, unpredictable, and undeniably brutal. People lived in the shadow of powerful empires, ruled by kings who claimed divine authority. Life and death were closely intertwined, with famine, disease, and warfare constant threats. In this world, religion wasn't just about Sunday sermons and moral guidance, it was a matter of survival. Rituals, often involving animal sacrifice, were seen as a way to appease the gods, to ensure good harvest, to ward off evil spirits. These weren't acts undertaken lightly, they were deeply ingrained in the fabric of society, a way to make sense of a chaotic and often terrifying world. Echoes of ancient Mesopotamia, a familiar covenant pattern. The covenant between God and Abraham, while unique in its specifics, shares striking similarities with other covenants from the ancient Near East, particularly those found in Mesopotamia. These treaties, often made between kings and their vassals, involved elaborate oaths and rituals designed to solidify alliances and ensure loyalty. One common element was the use of animal sacrifice, particularly the dividing of animals into halves. This act, known as a covenant sacrifice, symbolized the binding nature of the agreement. It was as if to say, just as these animals are now irrevocably divided, so too shall we be divided if we break this oath. These covenants often invoked the names of gods as witnesses and guarantors of the agreement. By calling upon the divine, the parties involved were essentially placing themselves under a higher authority, ensuring that any breach of contract would have cosmic consequences. A world steeped in the supernatural when gods walked the earth. Now imagine a world where the supernatural wasn't confined to the realm of myth and legend, but was an ever-present reality. People believed in a pantheon of gods and goddesses, each with their own domain and temperament. These deities were not distant, uninvolved entities. They were active participants in the world, capable of both great benevolence and terrible wrath. In such a world, encounters with the divine, however terrifying, were not outside the realm of possibility. Dreams, visions, omens, these were seen as messages from the gods guiding human affairs, shaping destiny. So when we read about Abraham's encounter with God, we must remember the context in which it occurred. This wasn't just a man talking to a voice in his head. This was an experience charged with supernatural power, a meeting with the very force that held the universe together. The power of blood, life, death, and the divine. The use of blood in the covenant ritual is particularly significant. In many cultures, blood was seen as the very essence of life, a sacred substance that connected the physical and spiritual realms. To shed blood, then, was not merely an act of violence, but a deeply symbolic gesture. In the context of sacrifice, blood was seen as a way to appease the gods, to atone for sins, to nourish the divine. By offering the lifeblood of an animal, humans were acknowledging the power of the gods and their own dependence on the divine. Furthermore, the act of walking between the divided animals, of being surrounded by blood, could be interpreted as a symbolic death and rebirth for Abraham. He was essentially leaving behind his old life, his old loyalties, and entering into a new covenant, a new identity defined by his relationship with God. Beyond the gore, the symbolic language of sacrifice. It's easy to get caught up in the gruesome details of the ritual, to be repelled by the violence and bloodshed. But it's important to remember that for the ancients, sacrifice wasn't about gratuitous gore, it was a profound act of communication, a way to express complex ideas and emotions through symbolic action. Each element of the ritual, from the choice of animals to the specific actions performed, carried a deeper meaning, a message encoded in a language that transcended words. To truly understand the covenant between God and Abraham, we must move beyond the visceral reaction to the blood and guts and try to decipher the symbolic language being used. Only then can we begin to grasp the full weight of this ancient pact and its enduring legacy. A covenant of shadows deciphering the divine message. The imagery of the covenant ceremony is about as subtle as a blowtorch to the face, isn't it? But beneath the blood and guts lies a tapestry of symbolism, woven with threads of fear, obedience, and unwavering faith. You see, the covenant wasn't just a legal contract, it was a spiritual transaction, a divine ultimatum cloaked in the language of ancient ritual. God, in his infinite wisdom, chose a form of communication that would resonate with Abraham on the deepest level imaginable. Think about it. The dividing of the animals, the path of blood, the smoking fire pot, these weren't mere theatrics. They were visual metaphors designed to convey the enormity of the pact being made, the absolute commitment demanded by the Almighty. Remember that bit about walking between the halves of the sacrificed animals? That wasn't just Abraham taking a stroll through a butcher shop. It was a symbolic act of self-cursing, a visceral expression of his absolute obedience to God's will. It was as if he was saying, if I stray from this path, if I break my word, may I be ripped asunder, just like these animals. Talk about commitment, eh? It makes signing on the dotted line seem like child's play. This emphasis on obedience wasn't unique to the covenant with Abraham. It was a recurring theme in the ancient world, a fundamental aspect of the relationship between humanity and the divine. Kings demanded it from their subjects, gods demanded it from their followers. And the consequences of disobedience were often swift and brutal. Now, some might argue that this covenant was a bit one-sided, wouldn't you say? God gets his chosen people, Abraham gets, well, a whole lot of responsibility. But here's the thing, the covenant wasn't just about land and descendants, it was about something far more profound, faith. Think about it, Abraham was asked to leave his homeland, his family, his entire way of life, all on the promise of something he couldn't even see, couldn't even touch. He was asked to trust in God's plan even when it seemed utterly illogical, utterly impossible. This, my friends, is the true test of faith, the willingness to surrender everything, to sacrifice everything for something greater than oneself, and it's a test that continues to resonate with people of faith to this very day. Now let's talk about that promise of descendants, shall we? God promised Abraham that his offspring would be as numerous as the stars in the sky, which is quite a lot even by today's standards, but there was a slight problem. Abraham and his wife Sarah were getting on in years, and let's just say their biological clocks were ticking rather loudly. Years passed, decades even, and still no heir. Talk about testing one's faith, right? It would have been easy for Abraham to give up hope, to curse God for making an empty promise, but he didn't. He held on to that promise, even when it seemed like a cruel joke. This, my friends, is the essence of the covenant, the unwavering belief in a promise, even in the face of impossible odds. It's about trusting in a power greater than oneself, even when the rational mind screams for you to give up hope. The weight of inheritance, from Abraham to the promised land. So what does this all mean for us, living in a world far removed from ancient rituals and blood sacrifices? Well, the covenant with Abraham wasn't just a historical event, it was a foundational moment in the development of Western religion. It established a pattern of divine-human interaction, a template for understanding our place in the grand scheme of things. It tells us that faith requires sacrifice, that obedience comes at a price, and that sometimes the greatest rewards come to those who are willing to wait, to trust, to never give up hope. The covenant with Abraham, with all its blood and gore and theological complexities, reminds us that faith is not a passive pursuit. It's an active engagement with the divine, a journey fraught with challenges, doubts, and ultimately the potential for unimaginable rewards. A covenant echoing through time, from ancient altars to modern morality. Now you might think, that's all well and good, old boy. But what's a blood-soaked covenant from millennia ago got to do with me, sipping my tea in the 21st century? Well, hold on to your monocles, because this story has legs, you see. This covenant, this pact sealed in blood and fire, didn't just vanish into the mists of time. It echoed down through the ages, shaping religious thought, legal systems, even our understanding of morality. Think about it. The very concept of a covenant, a binding agreement between two parties, underpins much of our social and legal frameworks, and the notion of sacrifice, of giving up something precious for a greater good, is central to many ethical and philosophical systems. Of the blood of the covenant, sacrifice and atonement across religions. The theme of blood sacrifice, while perhaps unpalatable to the modern mind, is hardly unique to the Abrahamic tradition. It pops up in various forms across religions and cultures, often as a means of atonement, of appeasing the gods, of seeking forgiveness. The Aztecs, for example, practiced ritual sacrifice on a grand scale, believing it was necessary to maintain cosmic balance, to appease the sun god and ensure the continued existence of the world. The ancient Greeks offered sacrifices to their gods, seeking favor in war, good harvests, or protection from disease. Even today, many religions incorporate symbolic forms of sacrifice, whether it's fasting during Ramadan or making offerings at a temple. Now, the covenant with Abraham wasn't all sunshine and roses, was it? It came with a hefty dose of chosen people rhetoric, which, let's be honest, has caused its fair share of strife over the centuries. The idea of a specific group being chosen by God, being promised a particular land, has fueled countless conflicts, from the Crusades to modern-day land disputes. It's a sobering reminder that even the most well-intentioned religious beliefs can be twisted, manipulated to justify violence and oppression. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of interpreting ancient texts too literally, of failing to see the bigger picture. So how do we reconcile the bloody, often disturbing aspects of this covenant with our modern sensibilities? Well, one approach is to look beyond the literal, to see the deeper symbolism at play. The sacrifice, the blood, the fire. These weren't just random acts of violence, they were a language, a way of expressing ideas and emotions that transcended words. The covenant, at its core, is about the relationship between humanity and the divine, about the sacrifices we make for what we believe in, about the enduring power of hope and faith. And those are themes that remain as relevant today as they were thousands of years ago, don't you think? So there you have it, my friends. The covenant between God and Abraham, a tale of blood, sacrifice, and unwavering faith. It's a story that's both repulsive and alluring, horrifying and inspiring, all at the same time. We've delved into the gory details of the ritual, explored the historical and cultural context, and unpacked the layers of symbolism. And what have we learned? Well, for starters, that our ancestors were a tad more comfortable with blood and guts than we are, eh? But more importantly, we've glimpsed the power of belief, the enduring human need to make sense of our place in the cosmos, even if it means making deals with unseen forces and spilling a bit of blood along the way. Now, you might be tempted to dismiss this whole covenant business as outdated, but resist that temptation. Beneath the blood and thunder, there's a timeless message here. Faith often demands sacrifice. True commitment comes at a price. The greatest rewards come to those who wait, trust, and never give up hope. Lean in, ask questions, delve deeper. You might be surprised at what you find. Lord God, we thank you for your presence in our lives and the wisdom you grant us. May each day be an opportunity to grow in understanding, faith, and love. We ask that you guide us on our paths, help us reflect on what we've learned, and apply your teachings in our actions. May your peace surround us and strengthen us to face life's challenges with confidence. In Jesus' name, amen.